Welcome to HSE Study. Let me paint you a picture. A maintenance tech needs to replace a pump that's failed. Simple enough, right? But the exact model isn't in stock. So he grabs a similar one with a slightly higher flow rate. No big deal, he thinks. But 6 months down the line, a pipe downstream erodes from that extra flow and lets go, releasing flammable liquid everywhere. Why? Because that tiny change was never reviewed.
Now, that story isn't just a one-off. It's a symptom of a massive, industry-wide problem. In fact, research suggests that a staggering 80% of major industrial accidents can be traced back to some kind of failure in managing change. 80%.
And look, 80% is just a number, until you see the real cost. Uncontrolled change is what leads to catastrophes. Think about the disaster at Flixborough back in '74. A so-called temporary pipe modification done without a proper review led to a massive explosion that killed 28 people. That's the reality of what's at stake.
So, how do we stop these things from happening?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle today. This system designed to prevent these events, called Management of Change, or MOC for short. We're going to start by digging into the hidden dangers of what looks like a simple change.
Okay, so this is where it gets practical. How do you actually know when some little modification needs a full, formal review? It all boils down to one absolutely critical first question. Are you just doing a simple swap, or are you creating a dangerous deviation? And that brings us to the key difference between a replacement in kind, you'll hear people call it RIK, and a change. A replacement in kind, or RIK, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a like-for-like swap. Same model, same specs, identical. But a change? That's any modification that is not like-for-like, no matter how tiny it seems.
And this is where things get really subtle. Remember that pump from our story? That was a change, not a replacement in kind. You see, even a part that looks identical, maybe from a new supplier, could have slightly different material specs or pressure ratings. And just like that, you've introduced a brand new invisible risk into your system.
And, you know, the MOC process isn't just for hardware. It gets triggered by a whole range of things you might not even think about. We're talking about updating control software, tweaking an operating procedure, or even organizational stuff, like changing staffing levels on a critical team. All of those are changes.
Okay, so we figured out we're making a change and it's necessary. So now what? How do we actually manage it safely? Well, that's where the MOC process comes in. You can think of it as your procedural safety net, designed specifically to catch these hidden dangers before they cause a problem. Now, this isn't just some random checklist. It follows a very clear and logical life cycle. This whole structure exists to make sure every single angle of a change is considered by all the right people before it ever goes live. So let's walk through what that actually looks like.
We can break this whole thing down into 6 key steps. First, you initiate it. That means you formally propose the change and explain why it's needed. Next, and this is crucial, is the review, where a team with different experts assesses the risks. Then you need approval from all the stakeholders. Only after that can you actually implement the change. But you're not done. Next, you have to train and communicate with everyone affected. And finally, the closeout, where you update all your documents so everything is accurate. And I love this image because it shows just how important this all is. MOC isn't some extra piece of paperwork. It is the literal keystone that holds up the entire arch of process safety management. If you pull that keystone out, the whole structure is at risk of coming crashing down. The system sounds great on paper, right? But even with the best process written down, there are some really common traps that can lead to total failure. And honestly, knowing what these traps are is half the battle. So here are the big ones we see fail time and time again. First, there's temporary change creep. You know what I'm talking about? That temporary bypass that was only supposed to be there for a shift, and now it's been there for a year. Then you have undocumented field changes, little tweaks operators make on the fly that never get recorded. And here's a huge one, organizational blind spots. Replacing a super experienced engineer with a new grad, that is a massive change to your risk profile, but it often flies completely under the MOC radar. This is why the iceberg analogy is just so perfect. The physical change you're making, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's the part you can see. The real danger, the massive hidden complexity, and all the unintended consequences, that's all lurking just below the surface. The MOC process is what forces you to look below the waterline. So, after all that, What's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line here?
Here's the most important point. The MOC process isn't about stopping change. Let's be real, industries have to change and evolve to survive. MOC is about enabling that change to happen safely and systematically. It's about making sure you stay in control. At its heart, MOC is simply a structured pause. It's a system designed to fight back against that constant pressure to just get the job done, and to make sure that pressure doesn't blind you to a hazard that could lead to an irreversible disaster. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to take back to your own workplace. Seriously, think about it. What's that one temporary fix that's been there for months? That one small change that nobody ever bothered to document? Because that might just be where your next incident is hiding. Thanks for watching this HSE Study Explainer. If you found this breakdown helpful, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the safety topics that really matter. Stay safe out there.